Hey guys, in this video I'll be ranking every Arnold Classic and Mr. Olympia version of Ramon Dino, from his 2021 debut to his most recent Olympia showing in 2024. He's probably the most famous classic competitor outside of Chris Bumstead, and probably is the most famous in South America, so I thought it would be fun to look at how his physique has evolved across these major shows during his career. I'll be using a tier list format here from S plus to C, based on physique quality, things like structure, condition, shape, and stage presence, and how competitive he looked that year. For a simple breakdown, S plus means legendary, era-defining performances, S tier is still elite but just a notch below, A tier is strong but with minor flaws, B tier shows clear weakness, and C tier is for when he missed the mark. Now, before we do dive into it, if you guys are interested in high-quality, old-school labs supplements, you can use my code JakeUltimate or check out the link in the description down below. With that all being said, if you guys enjoy these videos, a like and sub would be really awesome, and without any further ado, let's get into this video. Alright, starting off the video with Ramon Dino's big introduction to the Olympia stage, we've got the 2021 Mr. Olympia, where he took 5th place. This was a major breakout moment for him, not just because it was his first time competing at the highest level, but because he immediately proved that he belonged among the best in Classic. Ramon really brought something fresh and unique to the division. His structure stood out right away, wide shoulders, flaring lats, and some of the craziest arms I've ever seen in the division. His X-frame was undeniable, and you could already see the potential for him to challenge for one of those top call-out spots in the near future. What really made him pop, though, was his overall flow. His lines were tight, and he showcased a great combination of mass and shape, especially in the arms and the legs. But while the foundation was clearly there, the polish wasn't quite at the Olympia winning level just yet, in my opinion. His condition was solid but not elite, he lacked that ultra grainy look that guys like Breon and Terrence brought, and his legs, while well shaped, weren't as deeply cut and separated, and his posing, I mean come on guys, the posing, though confident, was still a bit raw compared to the veterans on stage. You could argue that his posing was far worse than I might be suggesting, but it is understandable in my opinion for someone so new to the big stages to be a little bit, worse at posing. That all said, for this being a debut for him, it was extremely promising. Ramon held his own against guys who had been competing highly at, the top level for years, and he immediately established himself as a future title contender. Because of the slight lack in overall refinement and presentation, I think I'm going to put this version in B tier. It was a great starting point, don't get me wrong, and looking back, it's clear this version was just the beginning of something much bigger. Next up is Ramon Dino's performance at the 2022 Arnold Classic, where he made a massive leap from promising newcomer to serious title contender. He placed second here, just behind Terrence Ruffin, but what stood out to me was how much he had improved in such a short time. This version of Ramon was noticeably more refined than what we had seen at the 2021 Olympia. His condition was sharper, you could see it especially in the legs, and even in the midsection. The muscle detail was more pronounced across the board, and his stage presence had clearly improved. He started sporting his now signature beard at this show as well, which gave him a more mature, iconic look, and in a way added to his overall stage presence. More importantly, he beat several names who had previously placed ahead of him, including Urs Kalasinski and Breon Ainsley. That was a major turning point in his momentum, showing that he wasn't just, the next guy up, he was already there. Ramon's strengths really popped here at this show. Full arms, excellent quad sweep, and a wider back that stood out in the front and the rear, and arguably the best forearms in the division. While his posing was still a bit shaky and probably was still his biggest criticism, his physique improvements more than made up for any inaccuracies here. That said, Terrence Ruffin still beat him here, and to be fair, it is hard to argue with that. Terrence's posing was on another level, and his overall symmetry, density, and flow were incredibly polished. Some fans might debate the outcome, especially given Ramon's size and wow factor, but the judges clearly rewarded that balance and refinement over raw potential. Even so, this showing was great. It solidified Ramon as one of the top classic competitors in the world, and for that reason I'm placing this version in A tier. It was a huge step forward, and a massive win for his long-term trajectory, just not quite his peak version yet. Up next, we have the 2022 Mr. Olympia, and this was a massive turning point once again in Ramon Dino's career. After taking 5th the year before and placing 2nd at the Arnold earlier in the year, he returned to the Olympia stage looking sharper, fuller, and far more dangerous. This was the version that truly announced himself as Chris Bumstead's top challenger. From the very start of prejudging, the judges made it clear it was a two-man race between Sebum and Ramon. They were paired up in every comparison, and the energy in the room confirmed that Ramon was no longer just the fan-favorite underdog, he was in serious contention for the title. His improvements were undeniable, condition was on point, far, far better than his 2021 version, and you could see the crisp separation in the quads, hamstrings, and glutes. His waist looked tighter, his posing was more refined, and any signature arm-dominant shots stood out even against the champ. This showing was also historically significant because he beat everyone who had previously placed ahead of him, obviously except for Chris Bumstead, including Breon Ainsley, Urs Kalasinski, and Terrence Ruffin as well. It was not just a step up for him, it was a huge leap past some of the most respected names in the division. That is definitely a big deal. Still, Chris Bumstead retained the crown, and rightfully so. Sebum's combination of width, flow, posing, and condition was still a level above, especially in the side and back poses, as well as in overall presence and presentation. If Ramon had a shortcoming, it was a slight lack in back thickness and chest density compared to Chris, and maybe a bit more room to grow into his frame. But make no mistake here, he closed the gap more than anyone else had ever done before. For that reason, I'm placing this version of Ramon in S tier. This was a breakout, career-defining version of Ramon, just shy of S+ status, because he obviously didn't take the title, and wasn't at his best in my opinion, but absolutely an elite and just amazing version of him, and the clearest signal yet, up to this point in his career at least, that he was a future possible Mr. Olympia. Now we come to one of the biggest milestones and probably the best win in Ramon Dino's career so far, the 2023 Arnold Classic, where he captured his first major pro victory. After placing 2nd to Sebum at the 2022 Olympia, all eyes were on Ramon leading into Columbus. The pressure was high, and he definitely delivered. From the moment he stepped on stage, it was clear that Ramon had maintained, if not slightly improved, the physique that he brought to the Olympia stage just a few months prior. He was full, tight, and commanding. His condition was sharp, his midsection was controlled and tight, and his legs looked especially detailed. This version had the same signature round fullness in the upper body, but now with even more stage presence. He looked like a man ready to win, and that's exactly what he did. His main challenge here came from Urs Kalasinski, who's coming off a strong Olympia showing himself. The two battled through comparisons and were in the final call-out together, but when it came down to structure, thickness, and overall size, Ramon definitely had the edge. Urs may have taken the best posing award, but Dino's physique just had too much impact from every single angle. I also should mention that this show is pretty important because the former two-time champion Terrence Ruffin sat out, which meant Ramon had to live up to the expectation of being the next guy. And he did, in my opinion. He officially earned his place as the clear number 2 in the world, and as Chris Bumstead's top threat. There were basically no flaws on his physique in this version of him, and if we're nitpicking, maybe the chest could have, been a bit more full, and his posing, while improved, still wasn't as fluid or artistic as someone like Terrence or Urs, but obviously these are pretty small critiques on one of his most complete looks to date. For this reason, and all of these reasons I guess, this version easily goes into S tier. It was a dominant win, a career-defining moment, and the first time he truly looked like a champion in his own right. However, I don't think this was his best, most refined, and conditioned look just yet, and that version is coming up pretty soon. Now we come to what I believe is the best version of Ramon Dino to date, the 2023 Mr. Olympia. Coming off his big win at the Arnold Classic earlier in the year, the expectations were obviously sky high, and Ramon more than lived up to that hype. In fact, this was the closest anyone has come to pushing Chris Bumstead off the throne, at least until this point in time. From the moment he stepped on stage, it was very clear that this was a different level of Ramon. His condition was absolutely dialed in, probably the best of his entire career. He looked grainy, crispy, and dense, especially from from behind, where he had sometimes lagged in previous years. The glutes were sharp, the hamstrings were dialed in, and his lower back had that dry, dugout look that really stood out under the lights. Pose for pose, Ramon really brought the real heat here. The front double and rear double, for instance, were particularly dominant. His arm size, shape, and control in those shots made him look overwhelming. His X-frame as well from the front was in full effect, and his flow from top to bottom was just stunning. There's a real case to be made that those poses either went to him or were as close as they've ever been with Sebum. Now, yes, Chris Bumstead still had the edge in the side shots, ab and thigh, as well as the favorite classic pose. His shape and posing are just more refined and better connected, but what matters here is how much Ramon closed that gap. This wasn't just a good showing, it was a serious threat to the champion's reign. He was clearly ahead of everyone else in the lineup, and the only real discussion was whether he could edge out Sebum here. That's really how good he was. Now, there's no doubt in my mind, this is S+ tier Ramon Dino. The best version we've ever seen from him, the most complete, the most dangerous, and the one that truly pushed Chris harder than anyone had up until this point. This wasn't just a great showing, it was a peak-level, legacy-defining performance. Up next is the 2024 Arnold Classic, and this was a bit of a surprise, not just in how Ramon looked, but in the overall approach he seemed to take going into it. From what I remember, Ramon only prepped for around 6 weeks, which raised a lot of eyebrows, including my own. Whether it was due to time constraints, overconfidence after nearly beating Sebum at the Olympia, or just a miscalculated plan, the result was a version of Ramon that didn't quite meet expectations. Now, let's be clear, Ramon didn't look bad. He was still full, balanced, and structurally dominant and superior to everyone. His shape was intact, his arms still popped, and he had decent separation in the quads and hamstrings. And as always, his stage presence was very strong, and he moved confidently between poses. But compared to the ultra-dense, razor-sharp version that we saw from him at the Olympia just a few months earlier, this was a noticeable step down. His condition was softer, especially from the back and legs. The graininess and dugout detail that made his 2023 Olympia version so dangerous was simply not there. His midsection also didn't look quite as tight, and overall he lacked that crisp finish that you would expect from someone competing at this level, especially the second best currently. I was actually in the crowd for this one, and I could tell you almost immediately that Ramon did not look like the best guy up on that stage. That title was definitely going to Wesley Vissers, who brought an incredible combination of size, condition, and very classic presentation. It most definitely was not a robbery by any means. Wesley won fair and square, and Ramon rightfully was penalized for coming in off. Considering the short prep, the underwhelming presentation, and the fact that he was outclassed on the day, I'm putting this version in A tier. He still looked good, and his baseline genetics kept him from, falling any further, but this version was not sharp enough to threaten for the win in my opinion, and definitely was not anywhere close to that 2023 peak. Closing out the video is Ramon Dino's showing at the 2024 Mr. Olympia, and unfortunately this was easily the weakest version I've seen from him so far. And I say that with all the respect in the world. I genuinely like Ramon as a competitor. He's got the structure, the charisma, the fan appeal, and all the potential in the world to win the Olympia someday. But this particular showing was just way off in my own opinion. From the start of prejudging, it was obvious that this was not the same Ramon that we saw at the 2023 Olympia, where he pushed Chris. His physique lacked that razor-sharp condition and the dense muscular detail that made him such a threat the year before. He looked a bit flatter, a little watery, and not really dialed in. You really didn't see the same pop in the legs, the same etched definition in the glutes and hams, or the graininess in the back that had become one of his best attributes. But the most distracting thing here, and the thing that completely derailed his stage presence, was the sweating. Ramon started sweating heavily under the lights, and his tan started to run down his body, leaving streaks and uneven patches that totally ruined the presentation. It wasn't just a minor distraction, at least for me, it was something that pulled your eyes away from the physique and made the whole look feel very sloppy. For a competitor operating at the very top of the division, that kind of presentation issue is a major setback. Now, to be fair, his genetics still showed through. His arms were obviously ridiculous, his waist was controlled, and structurally he looked like Ramon Dino, but that was about it. He didn't look like a top-tier classic physique competitor on that day, and certainly not like the guy who pushed Chris Bumstead to the absolute limit just 1 year prior. I will add that the finals version of him was a lot better than his prejudging, but even then, I still don't really see how he beat out a much more polished, incredibly refined Brion. So I think I'm going to put this version in C tier. Part of it is yes, because I wanted to actually use that C tier, but it is also completely justified in my own opinion. He was off in almost every way: condition, execution, and presentation. Still a great athlete, still one of the best shapes in the game, but this was simply not his day. Anyways, guys, that about does it for this tier list. I'm extremely excited to see Ramon return to the Olympia stage later this year, especially because the throne is open for the taking. I think he has a much more pleasing shape compared to someone like Mike Sommerfeld, or even someone like Terrence Ruffin, who are being cited for, being the next Olympia guys in contention for the title, and I hope that he really does come back looking great. With that all being said, though, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching.